superintendent's
But
report?
it's a short.
Oh, yeah, that won't be part of the superintendent.
Okay.
It's not a lot.
I'll have to find out another way.
All right, I would like to call today, Thursday, November 20th, 2025, the Westwood School Committee meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Liberty and justice.
I'd like to recognize Westwood Media Center, which is live streaming this meeting and recording for later viewing on its platforms. And as always, we thank Westwood Media Center for all the work they do for us and their great partnership with us. I'm going to turn it over to Tim for the superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you very much. And happy to just start off this evening with just a little spin around our elementary schools with some pictures. These are over at Downey. Downey had one of their spirit days last week with the theme of students dressed like a teacher and teachers dressed like a student. So great to have those pictures over at Downey. Some pictures of Sheehan of students just enjoying their time in the library, doing good work in there. Over at Martha Jones, we have our gratitude turkey where every person in the building creates a feather of what they're thankful for. And on the right-hand side, the Student Council had a candy drive and letter writing campaign to support troops in the observance of Veterans Day. And then finally, over at Pine Hill, and was really happy to see these. So this was every classroom in the building decorated a pumpkin for a theme of one of their favorite books in school. So those were on display in the area underneath the main stairwell at the beginning of the academic wings. So these are some of the great pictures of the pumpkins that came out of that. So. As always, learning, we try to make it come alive here in Westwood Public Schools, so happy to share those pictures with you this evening. In terms of the agenda, there's really two big things that I want to talk about this evening. One is the Director of Student Services search. As the committee and the community knows, our former Director, Sue Maselli, had left the district in late August. Very happy that Lori Semino has stepped up and been our interim director throughout the course of this year. But we know that we need to go through a process to identify a permanent Director of Student Services. I also want to acknowledge we will also similarly need to go through a process for the Sheehan principal. I'm talking about student services tonight. The Sheehan process will probably lag about a month behind the student services process. It's really tough to do two searches simultaneously. So that's the order we're going to do them in. The process for the Director of Student Services search, and I will say the Sheehan search for that matter, will run similar to recent searches for the Assistant Superintendent and the Pine Hill Principal that we did 2 years ago. We'll convene a screening team that will be responsible for initial resume review, identifying candidates for first round interviews, recommending finalist candidates for further interview. And it'll include representation from administrators, professional staff, support staff, families, and hopefully a representative from the school committee as part of that search team as well. Once that team identifies finalist candidates for further interview, because we know that not everybody can be part of that screening team process, but we want to let people in the community get a chance to meet the candidates. We will have the finalists come and do site visits into the district to meet with staff, with families, and with students. And the final step is school committee approval of the superintendent recommendation. That's because under state law, the school committee has the obligation to vote up or down on the superintendent's recommendation for somebody who's the Director of Special Education or Director of Student Services. So the timeline here is designed to get us to that February school committee meeting so we can have the search wrapped up prior to February vacation. So working backwards from that February 5th date, our plan is that we'll release the job posting and description on December 1st. On that same day, we'll send out the invitation out to the community. I've already had a conversation with the chair of CPAC, but we'll send out the application broadly for the screening team. The deadline will be December 15th for screening team applications, and we'll notify people before the winter break on December 19th. The team will then kick off their work on January 7th. That's a kickoff meeting for the screening team. Part of that will be anti-bias training, for example. That's some of the work that we'll do there. We'll close the job posting on January 12th. That team will meet on January 14th with a resume review, schedule first round interviews, which we'll do January 20th, 21st, 22nd. I will say these dates in January, we want to put out definitive dates so that people get a sense of whether or not they can be a part. They are potentially subject to a little bit of change depending upon the composition of the screening team. I think what we don't want to change though is the week of January 26th to have that be finalist site visits and interviews. That allows some time then after those visits to do reference checking for me to extend a preliminary offer to the candidate and then to recommend that candidate for appointment to the school committee at the February 5th meeting. So that's the timeline for the Student Services Director search. Happy to take any feedback from the committee. I don't know if you want to have the discussion about a representative, or we can take that offline, or even at the December 10th school committee meeting, because the deadline is not until after that point. So,
Yeah, why don't we push it?
sure. Okay.
I mean, I always say, don't let us be the limiting factor. Obviously, if you needed another time, we could always call a meeting. You know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate that, right?
Yeah.
This is, it is an aggressive timeline,
Yeah.
but I have certainly learned in my career it is better to take the time and hire the right person
Right.
than to rush and not hire the right
Right,
person.
right.
So, this is the plan, but if we need to work the plan a little bit, we would certainly do that if necessary.
Okay.
While we're in the realm of special education, I want to give an update about our special education review. So we had talked about this last spring about hiring a consultant team. We hired a team from Rebus Associates. That team is led by Bill Lupini, former superintendent in Brookline and at North Shore Tech. So he and Karen Schmolk are the two representatives that have come in and worked to do the review here in the district. We contracted them with initially in July. There have been two major things that have happened in the district since our initial contract that really made us think that we needed to expand that initial scope a little bit. One was the change in leadership in the department that, we just talked about that. That happened in August. The second is we did see a significant exodus of staff, particularly ABA tutor staff, particularly in our WABA program at Pine Hill. And so we want to dig a little bit deeper into some areas to make sure that, again, if we're spending the time to do this, we want to do it thoroughly and we want to do it right. So what that means is that we are doing some additional interviews as part of that process. They have not yet had the opportunity with their initial scope to interview gen ed teachers. We want to make sure that gen ed teachers are interviewed because special ed should not be an island. And we want to make sure that there's a connection between what happens in the gen ed setting and what happens in the special ed setting. To do interviews with some additional family members. The initial interviews were more focused at the elementary level. We want to make sure that we expand that scope and hit other families as well. To interview our IAs and ABAs, to hear from them directly as part of this process, and to do a broader survey of staff and families. So those will be happening over the next couple of weeks. What this means is that the report which we were originally scheduled to have at our December meeting, that report will now be pushed back to our January meeting. I do want to acknowledge that while the December meeting was really to help inform the budgeting process, again, I would, to my last conversation, I would rather do it right than do it fast. But I do anticipate that we will have the preliminary recommendations in draft form, at least internally, to inform our budget process. So while we will have the special education review and the budget presentation together at the January meeting, I would fully anticipate that the budget presentation will be responsive to the recommendations that will be coming out of that special education review, because we will have that internal information as we do our final budget preparation. So that's the update on the special education review. Again, happy to take any questions or comments from the committee about that.
I'm glad that it seems like you're broadening the scope a little bit from the original, and I think that's good. I know people are eager to hear the outcome, but I think also I've heard from a few folks who were wondering what the scope was, and I think this clarifies a little bit further, so thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And the consultant has locked in on these deadlines, right? We're not going to get further pushing?
No. It's a formal contract amendment that actually adjusts the deadlines to what they are. But I think
Okay.
am not concerned about schedule creep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see the expansion of surveying family and staff and possible interviews with families. If interested families want to be interviewed or be considered for interviews, how might that process work?
Yeah, I would say they can reach out to me directly or through me or through Alyssa to me. I can't guarantee that we're going to be able to interview everybody that's interested, just because there's kind of a limit to how many people we can have. But if people have an interest, they can reach out to me directly.
And in that makeup of the interviews with families, would you be looking at just families with children who have special needs, or a variety?
No, in this context, because of the nature of the review, we're looking for families of students who are receiving special education services.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. That is the superintendent's report.
Great. Great. Moving on to chair and liaison reports. Just a couple things from me. I wanted to talk about the fact that the town administrator search process has hopefully concluded. And on Sunday night, the select board did extend an offer to Connor Reed, who is currently the town administrator of Easton. He's been the town administrator there for almost 9 years. Prior to that, he was the assistant town administrator there for about 2 years. So significant depth of experience as town administrator. I watched the interviews. I thought, you know, all 3 candidates were strong, but Connor was just really something special. I'm thrilled with this selection, and I am very excited to work with him. You know, assuming, I know it's subject to contract negotiations, but we're, you know, crossing our fingers. But I just wanted to raise the fact that I think we're very excited to have Connor join the town of Westwood. Very excited to work with him. I also want to thank Dory for serving on the screening committee. Job well done.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, so I just wanted to welcome Connor to Westwood. The other thing is we have completed all 3 of our community forums at this point, the 1 virtual and the 2 in-person ones. I think we got some great turnouts. We got some really good engagement. We got a lot of great questions. In terms of next steps, we will be pulling together a frequently asked questions, an FAQ, and we're hoping to distribute that, or at least make that available on our website as of December 1st. And then in addition, we are planning to just put out a quick survey to the community. Again, probably send that out December 1st or December 2nd. We will, of course, send it via email to district families. And I think we're going to add it to our social media links.
Yeah, we can put it on our website. We can add it to our social media links. You know, obviously there are people who we can't reach directly,
Yep.
but we know this decision impacts the community more broadly than just families. So you know, I would encourage all of you as committee members or others out there to amplify that survey as well.
Yeah. And so we will put that out. It's going to be a short window because our meeting is on, it's actually December 10th.
It is, yeah.
Yep. So I think we'll have it maybe open for about 5 days, and then we'll be able to collate the results. But I hope, you know, we get as much feedback through the survey as we can. It's not going to be a long survey. It's going to take you 30 seconds to fill out. So again, that'll be going out December 1st. Are there any other liaison reports?
I have one. So mine's with CPAC. So the leaders of CPAC have been working diligently with the folks from the school engagement committee recently. And I know there have been a few emails that went out, but there is a community dinner being planned at Sheehan on December 3rd. And the Regina Robinson, who's the Deputy Commissioner of DESE, will be coming in to sort of share her story as a mom and as an advocate. And I believe Lori Cimino, who is our Interim Director of Student Services, will also be there. And so there's a bunch of emails that went out, and I know it's floating around on social media for folks to RSVP. It should be a really good evening to connect and have conversations. It is an adult-only event. And there's an RSVP link that's circulating. In addition, I also just wanted to put a plug for CPAC out there because I asked if they wanted me to share anything. They next year are looking for board members. Several of the board members are rolling off, and they are looking for volunteers.
Great. Thank you, Dory.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I can just give a brief update on my role as the school committee liaison to the Performing Arts Curriculum Review Committee. And I'd say, 1, how much I've enjoyed being a part of it, and also 2, for families to look for surveys, asking for input, and just really encourage the community to give feedback on that.
Great. More surveys.
More surveys, more surveys. This one won't be long either, but it's really to gather, you know, a broad perspective from our families of, you know, their observations of our performing arts program.
Perfect. Anything else?
You mentioned social media. I just like to call out Alyssa for all the work there. It's really been.
Yeah.
It's just the volume. It's good to see us reboot that because I know we've been trying to communicate through all channels. So.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Thank you, Alyssa.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on to public participation. This is the portion of the meeting where members of the public are welcome to come and speak to the school committee. We ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and prior to speaking, you give us your name and your address. So Is there anyone who would like to speak? I'm actually looking at you two. Nope, okay. All right, I am closing public participation, moving into discussion items. Our first item is the FY27 budget priorities and timeline. It is that time of year.
It is absolutely that time of year as we begin the march towards annual town meeting in May. So, excuse me. You actually have a few more details in the budget calendar in your memo, but wanted to share the generalized FY27 budget calendar. I realize there's actually one date that I didn't put on here that I'll slide in here as well. We've already shared our budget templates with our principals and other cost center leaders. Obviously tonight we're having a discussion about operating budget priorities, and I want to preface this by saying this is an opportunity. I think we would all love to hear from you if there are certain things that we want to make sure that we prioritize in the FY20 budget that are coming from you as the committee, because it is your budget. We are having meetings with our principals and central office leaders. When I say we, that's Lemma and I, as in our roles. We're meeting with them. The date I did not put on here is December 2nd. We are going to FinCom. That is, I think, more about the facilities plan, but we may just talk a little bit about where we are with some early budget stuff, but that is mostly facilities. December 5th, internally submitting our final FY26 budget requests. We'll have a discussion at the December school committee meeting on December 10th about expenses and revenue. That's when we generally have those conversations. With the budget, Lem and I will again spend the week before New Year's, I think, locked in my office for entire days when nobody else is around, trying to finalize the budget. We obviously have a number of internal reviews that are in your memo but aren't here. But then the budget book delivered to school committee members on Friday, January 9th. The presentation at our Wednesday, January 15th, our Thursday, January 15th meeting. And then the public budget hearing and school committee budget vote on February 5th. March is for FinCom hearings and public hearings, and May 4th is the date for annual town meeting, at least as scheduled right now. In terms of, this is the same slide we use every year. These are our annual budget drivers. We need to make sure we meet contractual salary obligations. We need to meet the other inflation impacted costs, transportation, utilities. I'll actually talk a little bit more about both of those in a second. We want to try to maintain class sizes consistent with school committee goals. I'll talk about that more in a second as well. We need to address special education needs, and we want to continue, and I'm sorry, this is behind the scenes, I literally copied the same slide from last year. It is no longer our district bridge strategies or our overall district strategic plan. Before we post this, I'll make that change, so my apologies for this on the slide. Some things that are specific to FY27. On the personnel side, we're happy to have successful negotiations with the WTA, with our teachers last year, but we are entering negotiations this year with our instructional assistants and our ABA tutors. I think we all know this is likely tied in with some of our conversations about the change in staffing. So we do not yet know what the impact of this will be, but it will have an impact on the FY27 budget. Transportation cost increases, we still are on options for extensions of our existing contracts that will allow us to carry for an additional year. It looks likely that we will exercise those options, but it's something that we want to make sure we finalize in the development of the FY27 budget. Out-of-district special education tuition is always something that's variable. We've talked the last few years about the OSD rate. A couple of years ago, it had been this exorbitant rate of 14%. It's still higher than Prop 2.5, as you can see, but it is 3.05, which is, it's not great, but it's the lowest it's been in about 4 years. I will particularly note that this is an area that's gotten attention from the Inspector General's office. And I know nothing will be happening certainly for the FY27 budget, but there may be some conversations in the future around how the rate setting takes place. So that is something for down the road. Utilities, so the town's electricity contract is expiring in January of 27. We have benefited from really strong electricity rates for a number of years, but that as of right now is an unknown expense that we need to make sure that we think carefully about how we budget for that. Whether it is on the school side, whether it is on some shared cost on the municipal side, we need to have those conversations. And we continue to see the erosion of purchasing power on supplies due to continued inflation. So those are some of the big budget drivers for FY27 that are specific. To talk about class sizes for a minute, we know that the number one thing we do is put great educators in front of children. And so we want to make sure that we are responsive to our enrollment changes. The school committee's guidelines for class sizes, and I do want to emphasize these are guidelines, not mandates, and there are provisions of the policy if we exceed guidelines. But it continues to be 18 to 22 students in grades K through 3, 18 to 24 in grades 4 through 5. And reasonable class size, you can see for 6 through 12, 18 to 24, ideally not higher than 28, with the exception of traditional large group. Not just reading the slide out loud. Way more difficult to calculate class size at the secondary level. It's a lot easier at the elementary level. This time, the last 2 years, I've been able to say that we have not had any sections in excess of class size. We currently have 2. We saw a significant influx of students into Pine Hill last summer in grade 1. That rose our class. We now have 96 students in 4 sections. That's 24 students in each classroom at Pine Hill. We have worked to address that, again, consistent with policy IIB, through both how we're assigning interventionists in the building and by reallocating our instructional aides where they're spending part of their day. They had historically been in the kindergarten classrooms. They're spending part of their day in the kindergarten classrooms and part of their day in grade 1 classrooms. And the staff have really worked out schedules among themselves for how best to address that. Sheehan, we talked about this at the end of last year. I think the initial proposal was in grade 4. We changed that. We now have their larger class sizes in grade 5. So we have 2 sections of 26 students each. And we're similarly providing support as needed for grade 5 at Sheehan. I want to acknowledge that we do have a desire to maintain guidelines where we can for FY27, but we do have the constraint of physical classroom space. Pine Hill was built with 4 classrooms per grade level, and that is a constraint that we have. I think, Tony, I've heard you say multiple times in multiple venues that Pine Hill is filled. This is an example of Pine Hill being filled, right? And I also want to acknowledge that as we think about class sizes and developing the budget, we do have an uncertainty with kindergarten enrollment. And occasionally uncertainty with these move-in conversations as well, too. So we want to think about that in the context of class sizes. I think one thing that would be helpful as we talk about priorities that would be valuable to get some feedback from the committee this evening, on that second point about uncertainty of enrollment, particularly at kindergarten, but in some other areas, a number of years ago, we did identify a buffer zone in the district for school assignment. What I'm looking for this evening as we go through our process is there interest in the committee to explore the concept of buffer zones again, knowing that we are going to have some large-scale redistricting that will likely at some point in the next 5 to 6 years. So this would be a temporary triage measure to get through variability in enrollment for a couple of years. Because whether it is class sizes of 24 due to a large number of move-ins in one summer, or what I don't want to have is we have 3 schools that, Downey, MJ, and Sheehan, all kind of fluctuate between 2 or 3 sections in each grade level. And I would hate to have 48 kids in each of the 3 buildings in kindergarten and have, as opposed to being able to move some students around and be more efficient with how we allocate staffing, knowing the budgetary constraints that we have. So I think if we can start with that conversation potentially, and then move into other budget priorities.
Yeah,
So.
and I think this is really just a conversation about whether we even want to start exploring buffer zones. We had done them previously for sort of the Downey Pine Hill area, I think, in certain times and under certain circumstances. I think if we're going to explore it, we should look district-wide to see about buffer zones, but really, and we don't have the specifics, about like, we keep siblings together, ideally, yes, sort of things like that. But I think the question right now is, do we even want to start exploring those? And if so, then, Tim would go off and come back to us with a lot more information about it. And I think, just with the Everett Street project coming online, it might be something worth looking into.
And when buffer zones are established, sort of who makes the decision about which student goes to which school?
Yeah. So the way that would be executed is any student that is currently at a school, that would not change, right? So we're not moving any existing students, it's just about as new students come in. That would ultimately, there would be, again, I think given the class size parameters that the school committee has established, like we would work to make sure that we maintain those class size parameters. I think the default, it's probably a little, so I'm saying this is this initial reaction without obviously a fully vetted plan, okay. Right? I would think the default would be the existing attendance lines. But if something triggers a change, ultimately that decision needs to be made in our office it's not a school committee decision. Because there's no efficiency in doing that,
Right.
and that leads to all kinds of things that I think are not appropriate. So we would try to do it through some level of randomized, equitable approach to doing that for how we would assign students if they were needed to be moved within a buffer zone.
Okay.
But again, we would obviously have a much more detailed vetted plan if there was an interest from the committee in
Sure.
pursuing this.
I
And-
guess the root of my question is, it's not up to families to decide in that case, like, oh, I would
Yeah.
prefer to go to this
No.
school over that school.
Yeah, it would be our
Thank
decision,
you.
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you for that clarifying question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I also want to add, I would agree with Maya that I think the goal would be to work to keep siblings together.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think, we love neighborhood schools, but as we all know, that a disadvantage can be inequity in class size among those. This could alleviate a little, or at least mitigate that, that negative consequence of the neighborhood schools, buffer zones throughout the district.
Yeah, and I do appreciate, Tim, what you said about opening it up district-wide versus just looking at, the Pine Hill and Downey area. But looking at it across the district to see where we can kind of plug, make sure the class sizes are equitable and reasonable.
And would it be, excuse me, is the idea that it would be just for kind of incoming kindergarten students, or would it be for new families moving in to town?
it would be both, right? And I think, again, to the point of the grade 1 issue this year,
Right.
had we had a buffer zone established, we might have had the ability to make some different decisions to not have the challenge we have with that excess right now in Pine Hill.
I'm like, obviously, that those numbers are so concerning because, the odds of people moving out are slim. That grade 1 class could just keep growing over the next few years and be really, really
Every year.
large. Yeah.
At the same time.
So do we think it's worth starting to look at that?
I think so. My only caveat is it's a lot of work to really do this, so would we be ready for this upcoming cycle or not? Because this would require communication. There's busing, I know there's a lot of work if you're really gonna do this, so it's just a question,
Yeah, no, I think your point about busing is really important, right? Because there are some places where a buffer zone doesn't make sense because you don't have buses for that particular school that go anywhere near there. Lem and I, 2 days ago, sat for a half an hour at the map right outside of my office, just staring at where potential zones could be, having that conversation.
Your time,
So I think there are two phases to this, right? One is from a budgeting perspective. Establishing buffer zones would at least allow us to feel some more certainty about how many kindergarten teachers we are projecting for next year. They may not provide the certainty of what building those kindergarten teachers are in, but where we could say that, and I'm just going to pick on MJ and Sheen because they're next to each other, right, geographically. We could probably say with reasonable certainty that if there were a buffer zone established between MJ and Sheehan, we would budget for 5 kindergarten teachers between the two buildings. Because if we're in a situation without the buffer zones that required 3 in each building, we would reallocate and be able to do 3 and 2. Right, so that's kind of phase 1. Phase 2, about the execution of what zones are identified, I think they would probably require some level of community conversation about that. So we may not be ready for that as the budget presentation. What we could potentially do, though, is present some options, or maybe a preferred option, or how we want to do that, but provide a little more time for some feedback before we lock in what those zones are. But we would need to do that prior to kindergarten registration, certainly, because we want families to have certainty as they're enrolling for kindergarten what that process looks like. If that helps answer your question.
Yeah, I just think it's, this is could be a third round. I just don't, there's a lot of, this isn't could be, explosive. That's what I mean.
And it might not be possible.
That's what I mean. I just mean it's,
Yeah.
we're already in
Yeah.
November or
Yeah,
December.
and it might not be possible
Yeah,
for the
it's,
fall.
look at explain. I just mean for this cycle, it just may be challenging.
Yeah.
I think for move-ins, for, kindergarten enrollment, I think a buffer zone makes a lot of sense. And I want to just make that explicit because I think the community would start to get very edgy if there's any, if there's any gray area about where current kids who are enrolled in current schools, that will remain, that will stay.
Yeah,
So-
if we move them, that's redistricting.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And we're not doing that.
Right, so as long as that's clear, I think as far as move-ins or kindergarten enrollment goes, I think it makes a lot of sense to consider it and see what our options might be.
I mean, I feel I basically live in a buffer zone. My neighbor's across the street.
I
from
know.
Sheehan. I am the epitome of buffer zone,
Yeah.
so, but, so, let's explore it.
Okay, thank you for the feedback on that. In terms of other budget priorities, I don't think I have another slide here yet. In terms of other budget priorities, I do want to acknowledge one of our residual priorities from last year was the second phase of the wellness expansion of the high school. That is something that we know we need to implement consistent with the graduation policy. But beyond that, I'm really looking for your guidance if there are certain things that you want to make sure that we consider as part of that process. But the one other caveat that I will make, and I think this is response, you'll see this in the superintendent goals a little bit later on in the agenda, and also in response to one of my comments at the last meeting, I think to your question, Amanda, is really looking at how we allocate resources internally based upon student needs and not necessarily just based upon student headcounts. So that's one of the things that I know we'll be looking at doing as part of the process this year.
I think another thing to mention is the middle school foreign language expansion. I know we talked about that, but I think we are thinking that that will be driven a lot by scheduling, and that might be informed by the current reviews that are going on. And so I think maybe that's not in the budget. I just want to call
Yeah.
out that might not be in the budget this year because we're waiting for more info out of the curriculum reviews.
Yeah, the context around this is anytime we are looking to add something in the district, it necessarily means that something else needs to, we don't
Right.
have unlimited time, right? So there are trade-offs when we look to add something. Knowing that there are some ongoing curriculum reviews in the areas that are part of that overall conversation, I think while we would like to implement grade 6 world language, I've certainly heard that from the committee, I think doing that, and I know you and I have had this conversation, Dana, right? Doing that prior to having input from at least the information gathering phases of the reviews that we're in, I think is a premature step that might need to be undone if the information we're getting right now tells us something different. So, as I think about the budget book, there's always that section in the back of the budget book where we talk about things, priorities for future budgets. I think this would certainly go in there because I don't want this to fall off the radar. I don't think anybody in the committee wants that recommendation to fall off the radar. But again, I think to the point of I'd rather do it right than do it fast. So that is certainly the way we're thinking about that right now.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll lose sight of it. I mean, we all, I think we're all very focused on that, so. Anything else on what we want to see in the budget?
Lemma, I'm going to have a few things.
I'm expecting.
Well, my first question is back on kindergarten. We had talked in the spring about potential, why we couldn't open up the kindergarten registration earlier. It would at least give us a little more data. I know it's not
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's there isn't a reason we couldn't other than the buffer zone conversation we just had 2 minutes ago.
Okay,
Right,
that's
yeah,
fine, that's
yeah.
fine. But in theory, in
Yeah.
future years, if we don't want to do it this year, but in theory, a year from now, we could do it in, right? I mean, in
Yeah,
theory.
right,
okay.
yeah.
We do it in March now? Yeah, so we could do it January.
Or you could do it
We're doing,
October. I mean, you
Yeah.
can do whatever. Yeah. It's not perfect, but at least give us some data. Okay. The next, just one. So the other piece that I've heard, and Mike's not here, and I've heard that there's been unfortunately a big spike in middle school hospitalizations. So I'm just raising it. I know 10 years ago we did stuff at the high school when this happened. So maybe they can cover it with existing resources. But I'm just raising it as something to think about. I mean, obviously he'll raise it. So that's just. I guess that's my only additional priority besides the wellness. So.
Appreciate that.
And then just a comment, 2 years below level services budget. I know you're talking to steering committee, that can't go on forever.
right,
So let's just make the point.
yep, good.
We can talk a little bit more about this in the goals conversation as well, but highlight on data, whatever resources you might need to gather accurate data, to be assessing that data, to be staying on top of our data, to be looking at that from both student, staff quality of life, and also family, family data, family surveying, things like that, to be collecting that data and then reviewing it on a regular basis. I think if there are resources that can help us do that, I think that's an important priority.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You had already kind of touched on my concern regarding resource allocation based on student need, and also I would assume that class size falls under that.
Yeah.
So how are, what the plan is to address these large classes moving forward, knowing that we don't have space. So how are we going to address that creatively?
You already touched on
Yeah.
mine a couple slides back, so.
If I may raise one more, which might also be the kind of at the third rail, is the preschool and how we
Yeah.
might address the preschool.
Sorry, I neglected to say that. So I will say the same thing tonight that I said at the preschool. I know you were there at the preschool
Yep.
PTO on Monday night. We know that the physical space limitations of preschool are very, very challenging right now. And we know that the current situation is not tenable going forward, given the enrollment increases we're seeing there. I don't know what the plan is yet. We are working to develop the plan. And we will share that information. I think what I also said to let me say the thing that we are not doing. The proposal that was on the table around preschool last year will not be on the table for next year. So I want to say that very clearly, very directly, and I said that at the PTO meeting the other night. I think the second thing is that whatever we do propose, we want to make sure that there is an opportunity for our families in the preschool to be able to give feedback. I also know that we need to present that to school committee first before any other group. So if we do that, and just for the sake of argument, we have our budget presentation on January 5th. If we say we're going to talk about our plan, theoretically, right? We're going to talk about our plan on January 15th. We're going to talk about our plan on January 15th. There will be a meeting for preschool families on January 20th. This is your opportunity our opportunity to talk to you more about the plan that we proposed at that point. Something like that, right? So that there is, it is not just dropped, but it is dropped with a plan for how we gather feedback before implementation. So, thanks.
Okay, anything else? All right.
All right, thank you.
We are moving on to the Deerfield Reuse Advisory Committee recommendation. I don't know, Tony, if that's you or.
Yeah, so why don't I start? So we kind of had our final meeting, I think, a few weeks ago. The committee, met, several times. We did consider, we get feedback from some different sources around other options. None of them really were viable. We also explored really 3 potential uses that would be kind of within our realm. One is kind of swing space for Sheehan. A second is potential just backup space if something would happen at another school. And the third what was the third one? Oh, preschool was the third one. For a number of reasons, I think none of, the preschool is probably the one in theory would make the most viable. You'd have to probably invest several $1 million to make that really a preschool. Classrooms are not set up for that. I think a rehab machine is not really likely under the Doran-Whitty report. And then I think during the process of Doran-Whitty, we realized that if something did happen at a school, modulars are a relatively inexpensive way to deal with a temporary situation. So, given that, the recommendation was to kind of, and you'll see the motion to give it back to, here it is. Recommends that transfer the care, custody, and control of the Deerfield School at 72 Deerfield Avenue to the town of Westwood, effective July 1, 2026. The other thing that I hadn't realized, but Lemma helped put together, was actually it's something like $77,000 of cost in our budget right now, which is probably one teacher. So I think that was another consideration. There's actually some real cost we're bearing that will be freed up for the budget. And it's and I just reiterate to people in the community, it is being used a lot now. As you know, the rec it's opened up a lot of programming for them. Westwood Media is there, IT, so it's continued. Will presumably be continued, but I think you'll see the motion. I think this has to actually go to town meeting.
Yeah.
Right. So this will set the process, then the motion in town meeting, and then we'll transfer it at the beginning of the next fiscal year. And
Yeah.
And then finally, I just want to thank, particularly, there were a number of people like Lemma and Tim, obviously on the committee. I want to thank Rich Adams from Rec. I want to thank obviously Tom Carey, so that's on our team, and then I want to thank the parents, the 3 community members, Matt Apel, Kitty Callahan, and Sarah Dugan. Thank them for their time as well.
Great. And just in terms of the process, it's considered almost like a land transfer. So at town meeting, there will be a townwide vote where the town will vote whether or not to transfer the care, custody, and control of Deerfield to the town. And you'll see that in the motion. So the motion will ask the select board to place a warrant article to that effect.
Do we manage the grounds? That's by town.
I do, yeah.
The town does that.
Yeah, and I wanna clarify one thing, which is that, this motion doesn't actually free up funds. We would have had to, had we retained the Deerfield, we would have had to budget for it appropriately. So the costs like we're incurring are like pressures that are not properly budgeted in FY '26. Because we didn't really, we've effectively like used those utility costs and we need them to manage Pine Hill, which the square footage there is like more than Deerfield and Hamlin put together. So when we opened Pine Hill, we didn't, retain the utility lines for the Deerfield, for example, and we applied that to Pine Hill.
But cash costs, we're sending cash out the door.
Yeah.
That would
Yes,
be
it's a
next-
real,
yeah,
it's a
okay.
real, it's
Yeah,
a real
okay,
impact.
budget, yeah.
Absolutely.
Budget versus cash, yeah.
And so
We
I'm.
no longer have to find that cash.
Yeah, exactly.
We would have had to find the cash if we
Right.
were to maintain it, and that would have meant like a difficult decision, and it's about the equivalent of a teacher. So I think that all of that is accurate, yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, Tony, thank you for
Yeah,
serving on that.
thank
We
you.
appreciate it. And for everyone on that committee.
Yep.
And we will, I think we're voting later on minutes, and we're also,
Yeah, just to explain the minutes.
Yeah.
This was so you guys could obviously all abstain, but this was a question even Tim didn't know the answer to. But this was the final meeting of subcommittees. How do you actually approve the minutes? So technically, you can actually bring it to the full committee, or you can actually, the chair of the subcommittee can actually just kind of by discretion, apparently. So a little bit of piece of trivia that Tim didn't
All
know
right.
about. So,
can't wait to abstain.
yeah, important, yeah, very important stuff.
Great. Okay, moving on to superintendent's goals.
Sure, thank you. So, you see in your packet my goals for 25-26. These, under the superintendent's evaluation process, there is a professional practice goal, there's a student learning goal, and there's a couple of district improvement goals. Each of these are designed to be aligned with the strategic priorities, some of our strategic priorities in the strategic plan. So I've made the cross-reference here. Inside the memo, you can see the evidence of implementation for each of these goals, but for the purpose of presentation, I'll read the goals themselves, and then certainly willing to engage in conversation around them. So for the professional practice goal, and I should also mention this is both in response to implementing our strategic plan and to the previous feedback the committee has given me. So under the professional practice goal, implement an approach to communication that provides a consistent cadence of direct communication to families in the community about district actions and priorities. I think to the point about how we're doing a little bit more on social media, that's in response to this. One of the things that I will be implementing is regular, I tend to do a lot of sort of, I would rather do more regular cadence like monthly communication than just communication about sewage leaks at Thurston. And so we'll be implementing that. And so that's the professional practice goal. The student learning goal is to amplify student voice and increase student agency in the classroom through consistent district-wide implementation of the principles of universal design for learning. When we talked about our PD plan for this year, it is around UDL and is around student voice and agency. And I know that we've extended an invitation to all of you as committee members, if you're able to join us for our keynote presentation on our professional development day on December 1st. So if you're able to make it, please let us know. We'd be happy to have you there. If you can't totally understand, you all have jobs and other things you need to do as well too. But just if it is helpful for our conversation at the committee around this, we certainly want to extend the invitation. And I want to thank Caitlin for thinking of that. So. Under district improvement goals, I think you had just alluded to this a second ago, Joanna. So this is really directly from strategic priority 4.3 is deepen the use of data to inform instructional practices, resource and staffing allocations, and efficacy of district initiatives. Really, this has been something we talked about through the bridge strategy. We're talking about here, really trying to dig into the use of data more specifically. I think to address the comment you had made a second ago, Joanna, I think if we're talking about tools, I think that may be a thing for FY27. If we're talking about people, I don't see a scenario where FY27 is implementable, and the strategic plan actually contemplates that in FY28.
Yeah.
So just for some clarity around
Yeah,
that.
and I was thinking more like resources,
Yeah.
databases, whatever might be available.
Appreciate that, thank you. And then finally, and this last one should not come as a surprise, the district improvement goal to engage the community to prioritize the focus of a statement of interest with the MSBA and build support for implementing the identified recommendations from the district facilities plan. And that's aligned with priority 4.4. So I present these to you as my goals for 25-26. Would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, or comments about them.
I'll stick with data, and without reiterating, I think generally for any of these schools, but specifically here, is having a little bit more specificity and time-bound parameters for some of these schools where possible. In some cases, I see especially the time-bound, but where we could, for example, in communication, indicate increase subscribers, like by how much, or, I like things with just a little bit more bulk behind it where possible. New, things around like the new website, what would are there additional kind of sub-goals under the website around goals for that? Is it literally just moving into a new platform, or is it a rethinking of what content gets on there, how it's shared, how it's utilized, additional resources that might be needed for that. And yeah, that's probably it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say on that last point, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So we are, I don't think ready to share anything publicly yet.
Sure.
But we have been going through a process with website vendors to be ready for next year.
Great.
I want to thank Steve Ouellette for leading our charge on that front. So.
Anything else on the goals?
Big fan of redoing that website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same.
It is, I think we all are.
Yes.
And I think we're excited about what is, Steve just sitting there smiling, as well he should. Done a really good job with us through this.
I mean, everybody, the new town administrator, I mean, the town, that might be something to collaborate with the town on. I mean, I don't want to slow us down, but
Yeah.
that town website,
Yeah,
Brutal.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
so what
It's
I
a
will.
fight to the bottom between ours and theirs.
I mean, yeah, I think ours would actually even be better, but.
So
The
I
procurement page is
Wow.
Yeah.
special. Have you checked that out?
Yeah.
while I
I say
appreciate
better.
the interest in collaboration,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to slow down
I
our
get it, I
process.
got it,
So
I got
we
it.
are happy to share our resources
Fine,
with
fine,
the town.
I wasn't,
But
but.
yeah.
If I can go back to the district improvement goal around staffing allocations, data, et cetera, again, just to reiterate that idea for quality of life surveying for staffing in order to better understand what's keeping our teachers here, where is the attrition, how do we make sure we're doing exit surveys where possible and getting a better sense of how do we keep our top talent here in Westwood.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think you'll actually find that in, I wasn't as explicit in the memo, but you'll find some of those steps and timelines in the strategic plan itself.
Sure. Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Anything else?
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the proposed new policy, IKFE competency determination. This is a second reading. You'll recall we discussed this last meeting.
Yeah, there are no changes from the last time around, and it would be my recommendation, if you're willing, to waive the third reading and to vote the policy when we get to that point of the agenda. So,
Are there any new questions on this policy or anything to discuss here? We'll vote later.
No
Okay.
questions.
And finally, under discussion, the DESE Middle School Pathway Exploration Policy. This is a first reading.
yeah, so just to explain what this is. So in the spring of 2025, the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education amended their regulations around vocational education. There were two components to those revised regulations. One was to change the admissions change the regulations around the admissions protocol for vocational schools. There have been a lot of concerns in the Commonwealth raised around equity of admissions into vocational schools. And the second one was that districts that are part of vocational agreements, regional vocational agreements, need to adopt a middle school pathway exploration policy to ensure that there is equitable access for students in middle schools to be able to explore potential vocational career technical options. Neither of those are really an issue for us here in Westwood. It's not something that has been, this is more of a hot button thing in some other communities, but because we have, we don't have a ton of students that go to Blue Hills or go to Norfolk Aggie, but we do provide access to students in the ways that we should. So the proposed policy here is really sort of a boilerplate policy. It doesn't change any of our existing practices. but it makes sure that we're compliant with the new regulations. So don't have a whole lot more to say other than that, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions if you have them. The one other thing that I do want to say, in typical DESE fashion, we were actually supposed to have this policy adopted by November 1st. Despite them giving us no guidance on how to create the policy. They were accepting waivers, or extension waivers for the policy. So we had an extension approved to December 31st. So it'd be my recommendation that, similar to the graduation policy, that we waive the third reading and vote to accept this at the December school committee meeting.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this policy has been and is consistent with our practices. So
That's helpful.
it's just sort of codifying what we already
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
Are there any questions about this or any discussion? Nope, okay. Moving on to action items. Our first action item is the vote on the Deerfield Reuse Advisory Committee recommendation. Tony, do you want to make that motion?
Sure. I will move that the school committee recommend to the Westwood Select Board that the Select Board include in the May 2026 annual town meeting warrant an article providing the school district shall transfer the care, custody, and control of the Deerfield School located at 72 Deerfield Ave to the town of Westwood. God, I don't know what I'm doing. Swear to God, I'm just tired. Such transfer is effective of July 1st, 2026. Further, I move that the school committee take any steps necessary to accomplish and transfer.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No,
No,
this is the recommendation, not
This is
the
the
motion.
recommendation. These aren't the minutes. This
Okay,
is just
I
the-
was just trying to follow the rules. Okay, good. All right,
Are you an aye?
I'm an aye.
Okay. All right,
Sorry.
it's unanimous. Okay. Vote to approve the 2026-2027 school calendar. We have a little amendment on this one. Do you want?
Yeah, I can take this. So, the original calendar we proposed, we had kept the professional development day on the Monday after Thanksgiving, as we historically have had. I think we had some conversation at the last meeting around the fact that next year's election day is not only a general election day, it's also the midterms, both the state election and the midterms. Reached out to Dottie Powers for her feedback on this. She said the state election cycle every 2 years brings a larger voter turnout than local elections. Voters have adapted to the one polling location. However, if both elections projected to have a larger voter turnout, it would be beneficial to have a professional development day with no school for the students. So I think with that feedback, I'm just even thinking about like parking. I think it would be my recommendation to actually amend the calendar as proposed and have November, I just want to make sure it's November 4th. November 3rd.
November 3rd.
And to move the professional development day from from November 30th to November
November
3rd,
3rd.
2026, and then vote the calendar as amended.
Yep, so our options tonight are to vote the calendar as is, to vote the calendar as amended, as Tim just mentioned, or to push it to December to have more discussion.
So
But
we
the only
talked about this. This is a change. We can change it. I'm going to vote no if we move it to the second, move it to the election day personally. You know, I think it's disruptive. We have Veterans Day. We had agreed to Dottie, she'd argue this. We had agreed that we weren't going to do this. We would do it every federal election, which I understand why we do it the federal election. I think it's disruptive to have another Tuesday, you know, when you have Veterans Day on a random day. It's just, to me, it's not good educationally. And given the vote by mail, early voting, these elections are not, this isn't the federal elections, which has a completely different political dynamic and things. So I'm a no on this if we decide to do that personally.
Okay. Do you have a view from an educational
Yeah,
perspective?
so, and just for clarity, there are the federal congressional elections that are happening next year.
Yeah, but it's not a
which-
presidential.
It's not, but it's not a.
Sorry, you're right, they're federal, but I mean, it's not a presidential.
It's not the
election.
president.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, educationally, I will say that my experience prior to coming to Westwood was always having PD on Election Day, both as a student in New York years ago and then as a superintendent in another district. It is more common sort of geographically in this area for it to be Monday after Thanksgiving, but it's kind of a mixed thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a little difference in flow when that happens. But I don't necessarily have a strong educational perspective one way or another on that. I don't know if you have. I want to defer to you here as well, too, as the person who, yeah.
And I think mine is more planning wise as opposed to educational benefit. having another month to be able to pull together the professional development gives us a little bit more lead time at the start of the year to get educator buy-in. We have on that day generally educators leading learning sessions for one another. So to do it early November would be a little bit trickier on the planning side, but nothing we can't do.
I see Tony's point though, because that would mean that the first week of November, you'd have a day when things were closed. The second week, you'd have a day that's closed. I'm guessing the third week, you'd have to have an early release day. And then the fourth week of November, there would be 2.5 days of closure. So it would be, that's a lot. That's something every week, and that month. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe pull in some consideration for the other professional development day that's happening in November that month, so that we weren't having something every single week for families.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and conferences, yeah.
I agree. With Dory and Tony, I also think, this has been, historically, we've always had that Monday after Thanksgiving off. So I think families, I would guess, some families are traveling and work that into their plans every year. So I wonder if we wouldn't see more students absent that day.
That Monday after.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see both sides.
Yeah.
Right? I think parking is definitely an issue, particularly because, well, a lot of people come after work, and at that point, most of the students are gone. But in the morning, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
When you've got the people going to try to vote before. On the other hand, I very much appreciate your point of maximizing the time to plan a successful PD day. And your point of it being disruptive. I think that if we're gonna do it every 4 years, is that disruptive? Like if everybody's like, oh, normally it's the Monday, but every 4 years it's the first Tuesday of November. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, if you were to compare the off-cycle elections, I bet if I pulled the turnout compared to what we got for FS1, I bet it's similar. I bet it's like 40, 4,000, 5,000. It's presidential elections are double that. So I don't know. I mean, we had FS1. We didn't call school off that day. I mean, what are we going to do when there's an override? We're going to call school off? I don't know.
So did you say there was an option we can vote? There's 3
What?
options, and one of them is to kick it to next month.
Yeah, don't say that.
Do you guys think we need more time?
I suppose I think it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more time.
Yeah,
I mean, I think for a purpose, like the reason we try and vote this thing in September, which we have not been successful to do this year, is because we want people to be able to plan vacations. I don't
Yeah.
think this will materially change. Well, it might change Thanksgiving for
Thanksgiving
people,
plans,
but
yeah.
that's a year away. Like, I don't know if anyone's buying plane tickets for Thanksgiving at this point.
But it's
So-
really, I don't know in off years. I'd be interested in off years like this. It's also disruptive to parents. And that's what I mean, it's another
right.
day, and most companies don't give election day off,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Some do. David
And
had
off
it
years, and every year,
Yeah, he had it off this past.
I don't see it in any company.
So
I
I'll
work-
I'll
That
just
was a
throw this
rule.
out there too, it's also a gubernatorial election year this year too. And I don't know what that does, and that is off cycle with everything else, so I don't know what that does to
But
turn
it's-
on. So
yeah.
if I can offer a
I
suggestion.
mean, Dottie, we agreed to this, and now she's trying to
Well, no,
change the rules of the
To
game.
be fair, we raised this
Okay.
with Dottie.
Yeah.
She did not come to us and ask us to do this.
Okay.
I just want to make that clear.
So if I can offer a path at least for this evening, I think to the point about families planning vacation, at least for the summer, if the committee could vote this evening to set September 2nd, 2026 as the first day of school for the 26-27 school year, that at least provides some clarity on the summer vacation front, and then table a discussion on the calendar as a whole for the next meeting.
I mean, I think we could do that. We could also vote the rest of the the rest of the vacations.
Yeah, that's
if we
true.
wanted
Yeah.
to, right?
Yeah.
If people are truly trying to plan. Nothing's going to change except either November 3rd or November 30th will be a day of closure.
Can I just maybe ask one question? Juneteenth is recognized, I believe, on the 21st. So if we have 5 snow days, our last day will actually be on the 28th of June.
So Juneteenth, under state holidays,
Oh, gosh.
Is on a
recognized
Saturday.
on the Saturday.
Is
It's
recognized on
Ju-
Saturday,
Saturday,
so it's
June
not a
19th
state
itself.
So
holiday.
it wouldn't
Okay.
it wouldn't affect it.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that last date was also
Yep.
clarified.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to approve something? Or do we not want to approve anything?
I mean, I'd vote, why can't we vote tonight on what, I mean, I don't know.
What do you guys think? Are you ready to vote
I'm
yea
ready
or
to vote on
nay on the
the-
30th
I
versus
am,
the
but-
3rd? Or do you want more time? We know what Tony's doing. What do you guys want to do?
I think I would like to
Think about it?
think about it. I can vote on start dates and other vacations. Let's
Okay.
leave, like,
Yeah.
All right,
can
why don't
move-
we vote start date, end date, and just leave it at that. We don't have to get into vacations. Okay, so can I get a motion?
I move to vote for the start date of the 2026-2027 school year and the end date of the 2026-2027 school year calendar.
So the start date in
And
your
the end date.
motion is September 2nd.
Yes, and then the end date.
Yeah, can
Would
I
be-
actually just suggest you say that as presented, so there's no confusion about the 180th day versus the 185th day?
Yeah.
Because we need to make sure there's both in the calendar. so,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm starting over. Okay, I move that we vote for the 2026-2027 school year to start on September 2nd, 2026, and end
As presented.
as presented in the calendar here.
That works.
Does that
Okay.
do the trick? Okay.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. We got somewhere. And we'll come back with the other issue next. Okay. Can I get a vote on the October 14 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Can I get a vote on the October 17 executive session minutes?
So moved.
Oh, sorry, the executive session? Oh, the
October
move-
17.
Oh, moving them, okay. yeah.
Yes.
So moved.
Second?
Sorry, can I, just for clarity, I think what you're voting on this evening is the open session minutes, not the executive session
Sorry,
minutes?
sorry,
Yeah.
yes, well, don't we have to, oh, no, we do those.
Because you convene an open
In
session, so
open
you're
session.
approving the open session minutes. yeah.
Right, yes. Sorry, clarifying. Can I get a motion to approve the open meeting minutes of the October 17, 2025 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion to approve the open meeting minutes of the October 24th, 2025 school committee meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the October 29, 2025 school committee meeting? This was the facility forum one.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So this is the wonky one. Can I get a vote to approve the November 6th Deerfield Reuse Advisory Committee minutes?
So moved.
Yeah, so moved. You probably should second, I guess.
Second, I was there.
She was there.
Abstain.
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 Yay, yes.
Yes.
All right, approved. Right?
Yep.
Okay. And finally, can I get a motion to approve the open meeting minutes of the November 7th, 2025 school committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Finally, can I get a vote to waive the third reading, right, of the policy IKFE competency determination?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now can I get a vote to approve policy IKFE, the competency determination?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Whew, okay.
Minutes.
All right, is there any new business that anyone wants to raise at this time?
Perfect timing, right?
Perfect timing. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned, just in time to get you home for the Bills game.
Go Bills.